So, like the idea of dukkha, you won't completely get it until you're awakened like the Buddha. Most interpreters of Buddhism refer to anatta as a doctrine, but I think of it as a practice, not as a doctrine, as an anti-concept, not as a concept. When I say that it is a practice rather than a doctrine, I mean that anatta is the systematic denial of any effort to conceptually pin down the nature of the self. This is also what I mean by calling it an anti-concept. Whenever I ask my students to identify anatta on a test, I frequently get the answer that it is the Buddhist belief in no self. That response is not quite right. Anatta is more a denial of a belief than a belief itself. It does not set forth anything positive. The moment we conceive of anatta as a concept, we've placed an obstacle in the way of its realization. In one of his discourses, the Buddha discusses how the concept of self can lead to fruitless speculation and to contribute to our suffering. Here he also explains why he does not advance an alternative view of the self rather than merely denying others. This passage gives you a feel for the variety of perspectives circulating in the Indian axial age. The untaught, ordinary man thinks this way. Was I in the past? Was I not in the past? How was I in the past? Shall I be in the future? What shall I be in the future? Or else he wonders about himself now in the presently arisen period in this way. Am I? Am I not? What am I? How am I? Whence has this being come? Whither is it bound? When he gives unreasoned attention in this way, then one of 6 types of view arise in him as true and established. Myself exists, or myself does not exist, or I perceive self with self, or I perceive self with non-self, or some such view as this is myself that speaks and feels and experiences here and there ripening of good or bad actions. But this myself is permanent, everlasting, not subject to change, and will endure as long as eternity. This field of views is called the thicket of views, the wilderness of views, the contortion of views, the vacillation of views, the fetter of views. The untaught ordinary man, bound by the fetter of views, is not freed from birth, aging, and death, sorrow and lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. He is not freed from suffering, I say. Rather than put forward another view of self, the Buddha simply indicates that the concept of self is an unskillful way of thinking about human beings. We might use the word self for linguistic convenience, such as the reflexive myself or yourself, but we should never think that it refers to anything substantial or permanent. But neither should we think that anatta means the Buddha denies our existence or suggests that human life is an illusion or unreal. Anatta essentially means that we do not exist in the way we think we do. His denial of self is intended to declare that no concept whatsoever is capable of expressing the reality of who we are. The Buddha's understanding of the profound impermanence of reality is the basis of anatta, and is much of the reason why who we are eludes conceptualization. Unlike many other thinkers, he applies the idea of change to every aspect of the human person. Thus, the Buddhist description of the human, at least initially, sounds extremely negative. The so-called self is not a thing. It's no thing, nothing. It lacks permanence and immortality. But on further inspection, it is clear that the Buddha's view is not negative. He's merely attempting to disrupt our old habits of thinking about who we are. Rather than viewing the person as an immortal soul housed in a perishable body, the Buddha saw the human as a complex of interconnected and ever-changing energies or forces. He called these the 5 aggregates of being. Together, these processes wholly constitute what we call the human being. They are, first, the aggregate of matter, which refers to our physical makeup, changing by the moment as cells die and are replaced. The second aggregate is sensations, or feelings. By this, the Buddha meant the tonal qualities of our experiences, the way we automatically judge experiences as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. These judgments condition our tendencies of attachment and aversion. Like all beings, we seek out the pleasant and try to avoid the unpleasant. The third aggregate is perception, which means not only what we perceive, but also what we perceive it as, what's known as apperception. The fourth aggregate is mental formations, which are the sources of desires, craving, and intentions. This component is the source of karma for the Buddha. Hence, as long as there is craving, there will be rebirth. Finally, there is the aggregate of consciousness, which is the process of awareness. Now, there's nothing about any of these components that endures. At any given moment, whether we are aware of it or not, our perceptions, our thoughts, our bodies, our consciousness are all in change. Most importantly, there's no permanent subject or agent underlying these processes. An old Buddhist quip captures the idea exactly. There is thought, but no thinker. There is feeling, but no feeler. Thinking is real, feeling is real, but there is no subject or self who experiences them. The soul or self is simply an illusion, an unsubstantiated belief. Yet it certainly seems real, and most of the time we act as if it were real. I compare the Buddha's view of self to the appearance of a rainbow. A rainbow is not a substantial reality in the way it appears. The rainbow is not really there. It's an optical illusion created by the convergence of various conditions, including sunlight, falling rain, the physical position of the observer. When these conditions change, the rainbow disappears. No one will ever reach the end of a rainbow because the observer's position will change and the illusion will dissipate. To the Buddha, the Atman is the same thing, an illusion supported by various changing conditions. And this is why no one is able to identify or pinpoint the soul or essential self. But we certainly develop the habit of ascribing reality to this illusion. And therein, the Buddha says, our problems arise. Believing in a permanent, substantial self is not a harmless misperception. It is actually the root of what causes us to suffer. To believe in a real self sets in motion a series of thoughts, words, and deeds that precipitate anguish, misery, and disappointment. When I think the self is ultimately real, rather than a habitual construction of the imagination, I begin to identify with it and make it the center of the universe. I do my best to protect it, to make it more secure, to ensure its existence. I develop beliefs that relieve my anxieties about my possible non-existence, and I feel threatened if anyone challenges those beliefs. I may seek to enhance its status, its prestige, its power. I seek to maximize its pleasurable experiences and minimize its painful ones. I develop the qualities of pride and conceit. I feel lonely and separated from others. When things I judge to be bad come my way, I feel cheated and unfairly treated. Why me? I don't deserve this. And on it goes. Taking the belief in self seriously leads to desire and aversion, which condition attachment, and that is why we suffer.